Welcome to another edition of the MMA Lockcast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week we're going over UFC 269, headlined by a barn burner of a lightweight title scrap between Charles Oliveira going up against Dustin Poirier, and then in the co-main event we got the women's bantamweight queen and featherweight queen we can throw in there. Amanda Nunes going up against Juliana Pena, and she's looking to further cement her legacy as one of the best women's mixed martial artists of all time. Throw in Cody Garbrandt's debut at 125 pounds against Kai France, and a couple other intriguing spots throughout the card. This is a very entertaining card that promises to deliver, hopefully, once we close the cage door behind these guys come Saturday night. But first, as we always do, let's go over the betting recap for the last event, and it was UFC Vegas 44, where it seemed like a complete wasteland for everybody that was betting on this card, as there are, some upsets and a lot of things that were kind of tough to call for the card. So let's just start off with the main thing, which was the lock of the night play. All week I was saying I was getting a little bit too greedy parlaying Smoke and Morono here, but I felt, pretty confident in them. Felt the most confident about Morono, as I felt that minus 220, minus 230 was a great spot for him, even with that juice there. However, Smoke comes out there and just whiffs it right at the beginning of the night for us. So not a good start. Very surprised that Morales was able to hand Smoke his first ever KO loss. And yeah, I just really didn't see it going that way at all. So we take a 4-unit loss there. Also had a 1-unit parlay where both the legs ended up crashing. Had the fight goes to decision from Manal Cap and Zhumagulov. Cap exposes the chin of Zhumagulov that night, where, a lot of people believed Zhumagulov had enough durability to deal with the knockout power of Cap. Unfortunately, that was not the case. But either way, even if that cashed, Brendan Allen goes out there and gets knocked out by Chris Curtis a little later in the night. So either way, that 1-unit parlay was doomed from the get-go. So that was minus 1 unit there. Also had a 1-unit play on Brad Riddell at plus 110. I thought he was a solid spot. Thought he would be able to get the better shots off, but Fiziev just laid on him the entire time, and then obviously got that beautiful finish at the end with that spinning wheel kick. The only bright spot of the night, I believe, was the second fight of the night between Claudio Puelles and Chris Kritzmacher. We cashed on Puelles at minus 108. Unfortunately, it was only 1 unit, so makes a little bit of stops the bleeding a little bit from the rest of the night, but still, all in all, minus 5.07 units on the night. Not a good night for the betting side of things. However, got to get back to the grind and get back into the saddle here. And obviously I got a lot of nasty messages here and there from, YouTube commenters, Twitter DMs, all that type of shit, as you would expect. But it's not like I'm going to let one of these comments detract me from throwing away everything that I've built with this MMA Lock of the Night brand. We keep moving forward. There's a lot of people that depend on your boy weekly for takes and reads and all that type of stuff. And, depend on me to do the research and do the homework. And that's exactly what I do. So shout out to everybody that supports your boy, even through the ups and downs, specifically to the Patreon members that have been sticking around, even through some of the cold streaks that I've been going through. They trust your boy's reads. They trust everything. And even though they might not make my bets bet for bet here, sometimes they take my reads from other fights that I don't have bets on and put it up against theirs, and then obviously make some bets off of that too. So shout out to those guys. With mentioning the Patreon, obviously I want to plug that as well. $5 a month. Link is in the description below. It's awesome. It's only $5. And again, I will reiterate this. I am not a Patreon user or Patreon guy strictly because I want to sell my picks on there. I am on there because I put a ton of content together on a weekly basis, as you guys obviously see. I think I put 4 or 5 videos together on YouTube alone to drop to the public, and I do, very much appreciate the $5 a month that some people are chipping in strictly to support your boy on the content creation side of things, which I try to push a little bit more. Again, you can find 100-unit winners, all that type of stuff, but again, if you can't make yourself likable, if you can't connect with your fans and connect with people that are listening and watching your stuff, you're not really going to get anywhere, right? I know a ton of guys out there with amazing track records, but they're not able to get any generation going for anything. You know what I mean? Like, I see them pushing their bet MMA tips and all that type of stuff, but like, it doesn't work out. It really doesn't work out. People don't really care about track records as much. And again, I track just for transparency. So if anybody ever tries to come at your boy and be like, this guy's a fraud, how am I a fraud? You know what I mean? Like, I share my bet slips, I share my track record, I do all of that stuff. I don't scare away from losses. They end up happening. So that's I think the thing that really pushes people over the edge in terms of signing up with the Patreon and being like, okay, you know, I like this guy, I support this guy, and I want to continue to see him do what he's doing. And that's exactly what I have with the Patreon there. So shout out to everybody out there. Again, even the ones that stick through the cold streaks, I truly appreciate you guys. $5 a month. Link is in the description below. Secondly, Coolbet. Shout out to Coolbet. They support your boy, obviously. Coolbet.com. Use promo code MMALOTN2. That's the number 2. And they will match your initial deposit up to $200. And yeah, it's a great website. Great props. You can parlay the props. Great lines as well, too. And I do make a good chunk of my bets on that website. So make sure you guys go check out Coolbet. And obviously, you can help support your boy by using the promo code MMALOTN2. And yeah, check it out. All right, that's a wrap on the intro. Let's get right into the breakdown since I know that's what you guys are here for. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Jillian Robertson versus Priscilla Cachoeira. We got minus 360 on Robertson and plus 300 the return on Priscilla Cachoeira. Now, it's hilarious always seeing Priscilla Cachoeira as a big underdog, and people kind of know the risks you're taking fading her, right? I know a lot of people that bet Gina Mazzani last time around are kicking themselves now for trusting a girl like Gina Mazzani. But again, that's how little we think of Priscilla Cachoeira, right? She's a fighter. That's all she is. I don't know if you can really call her a mixed martial artist. She's a fighter. She goes in there, she tries to take your head off. Very rarely do you see her kind of engage in the clinch or the takedowns. She wants to go out there and just swing bombs and try to knock your head off. And that plays right into the game of Jillian Robertson, who's going to be able to counter those aggressive moves by going for takedowns. And I think the takedowns will be there with relative ease. We saw Priscilla get taken down time and time again by Gina Mazzani. Unfortunately, Mazzani just did not have the cardio or the gas tank to be able to go out there and put away Priscilla or even keep that up for 15 minutes. And we saw her get finished in that second round. Jillian Robertson, on the other hand, I do think she has good enough cardio to do something similar, but I don't think she's going to need the full 15 minutes to do so. I think she's the much better BJJ specialist, and once this fight hits the ground, I think we'll see that right away. You know, Priscilla at times does a good job in terms of getting back to her feet, but I think she's going to struggle with the high-level BJJ that we're going to be getting from Robertson on this time. With that said, there are times where Robertson goes submission over position, and if she doesn't end up getting the submission, she ends up giving up the position, and that's where her opponents are able to have success. But even if Priscilla does get the reversal here, I don't know if she'll be as safe on top either, right? You know, Robertson is very active off of her back, looking for arm bars, looking for triangles, looking for reversals, and I think she'll be able to hit a couple here on Cachoeira. The spot that actually intrigues me the most here is the under 2.5. Obviously, there's the submission and ground and pound threat from the Robertson side, and then there's obviously the KO threat from the Cachoeira side. I believe I played the under 2.5 in the Santos and Jillian Robertson fight, but unfortunately, I was not expecting Santos to engage willingly in the grappling as much as she did, which is why I believe that under did not head in that fight. Because if that fight did stay on the feet, I do think that Santos had enough power to really give Robertson problems and probably get her out of there. Cachoeira, same thing. I'd be surprised here if she actually engages in the grappling, looks for takedowns or just tries to grind out Robertson from on top. She's going to be looking to just knock her out on the feet, and that's really about it. So I like the under 2.5 here. I think it's just over even money, maybe minus 140 at this point in time. But I do think that Robertson runs through Priscilla here, gets the takedown, and then eventually either snatches up a neck. Personally, I think Cachoeira is one of those girls where if she's in a deep armbar, she probably won't tap. So I'm hoping that Robertson is okay with only settling for chokes. You know, I mean, you're going to have to put this girl out to get her out of there. And I think that Robertson will be successful in doing so. So I like Jillian Robertson here, and I'm going to take her by, you know what, fuck it. Let's go first round submission. Randy Costa versus Tony Kelley. We got minus 180 on Randy Costa and plus 160 the return on Mr. KGB. Obviously, you guys know that Tony Kelley is out there dating Andrea Lee now. And Andrea Lee had a big win a couple weeks ago, and they're looking to parlay that into another win for him this weekend. Now, I'm seeing a lot of confidence on the Randy Costa side, and for good reason, right? I think he is the better fighter overall. The unfortunate thing is he just doesn't have the greatest gas tank. We've seen it fail him twice now, even in fights that he's having success in, right? He hurts guys and stumbles them, and, more often than not, he's able to finish them. But when he doesn't, when the fight gets into the second round, he really starts to slow down. You see his confidence start to dwindle, and that's when his opponents are really able to take control and take over. The funny thing is, in the last fight for Randy Costa against Adrian Yanez, he had 4 minutes of solid success, dropped, hurt, rocked Adrian Yanez numerous times, but still managed to slow down. We saw a shift around that 4-minute mark where Adrian Yanez was really starting to push the pressure and get to Costa, and Costa was really starting to succumb to it, and obviously ended up finding a way out in that second round. Tony Kelley has been in an absolute barn burner against Kai Kamaka in his UFC debut, and that just goes to show, for me at least, that if he is able to deal with that early fire from Randy Costa here, he should be able to take over in the second and third rounds and possibly find that finish. Not possibly, I think more than likely he will be able to find that finish. So the way that I've kind of been looking to tackle this fight is fight doesn't go to decision, which I think is roughly around minus 220 right now, minus 215 a couple places. That's the spot. That will be more than likely my lock of the night play. I'd be surprised if this fight goes 50 minutes, considering Randy Costa as being the big variable in this fight as to why I believe the fight will not go to decision. You can also take Randy Costa round 1 plus 175, obviously much better than the minus 200 that he possesses. You could even go in on the round 2 because maybe he has enough success in that early second round to find that finish, but he will start to gas. Tony Kelley will be able to put on the pressure. I've seen him put on the pressure in other fights as well, and I feel like that's something that Costa will succumb to. So like I said, Randy Costa round 1 plus 175, Tony Kelley round 2 plus 850, and round 3 plus 1,000, but the play here is the fight doesn't go to decision. I'm expecting Costa to start him in round 1, but again, if he somehow survives the first 3.5 to 4 minutes of that round, I think that we see Kelley start to take over this fight. That's why I feel like covering both ends here by taking the fight doesn't go to decision is the best way to go about this fight. Again, you were getting similar odds for the fight doesn't go to decision and Randy Costa, but there has been some money coming in on Tony Kelley, which has brought that Randy Costa down a little bit more. However, I just don't see, why you would take the money line on Costa here. Take the inside the distance, right? I really don't see him winning rounds 2 and 3 convincingly enough for him to win a decision in this fight. So, don't leave money on the table. Take Costa inside the distance if you're that confident in him. Otherwise, just take the fight doesn't go to decision, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Kelley obviously very good on the ground as well, so I do believe he'll be looking to go for takedowns in the second round, and if he can successfully complete them, I do think a submission will open itself up, and I think we'll see Kelley take that neck or limb on home. But my official prediction for this fight is going to be Randy Costa. I think he's the much better striker, much quicker, much more explosive, and I think that's going to be too much for Tony Kelley early here, and we should see Costa get his hand raised via first round knockout. Ryan Hall versus Derek Minner. We got minus 200 on Ryan Hall and plus 170 the return on Derek Minner. Now, this is a very weird fight, right? Ryan Hall is always in weird fights, but we've pretty much gotten his game plan down to a T now. The guy likes to go out there, either go for takedowns or his Eminari rolls. He's always trying to find a way to get the fight to the ground. If he's not able to, he throws a lot of unorthodox strikes on the feet to either, goat his opponent to try to capitalize on some of these off-balance attacks and try to take him down, or he's hoping it's enough for him to close the distance, get in on the hips, and eventually get the takedown. On the flip side, for Derek Minner, he's pretty much been a banshee, right? A lot of his fights are finished inside the distance. We saw some discipline about him in that Charles Rosa fight a couple fights ago, but that was a great fight for him to stylistically go out and do that. Use his superior jiu-jitsu, use his ability to kind of maintain that top control against a guy in Charles Rosa who really struggles to get out from bottom, and he was able to win his first decision in a long time in that fight. Then in his next fight against Derek Minner, he goes back to his old self, right? He really puts it on Darren Elkins and tries to get him out there, but he gasses himself out, gives up that top position in the second round after going for a poor guillotine attempt. You even see, they're showing the coach's corner during that instance, and you see James Charles kind of like, fuck. well, why did he go for the guillotine? Even right after James Cross was like, don't go for that. You're going to give up the bottom position. And that's exactly what happened. That's when we saw Darren Elkins get on top, get that crucifix position, and really put the hurting on Derek Minner that night. However, I feel like if Minner stays disciplined here, if he counters effectively off the weird unorthodox striking of Ryan Hall, and if he can shuck off some takedowns, he could probably win this fight. But I just don't know if that gas tank is good enough. I mean, in the fight against Charles Rosa, he was able to rest on top and really do good work and maintain that top position. But here against Ryan Hall, he's really going to get worked, and that gives me some concern. However, Ryan Hall is just like, he's built up this mystical beast image to a lot of people because of his jiu-jitsu, but if he can't get that going, then things get very, very shaky for him. I personally, this fight is too volatile for me to pick a side. I am ultimately going to go on the Derek Minner side and say that he stays away from all the unorthodox shit that Ryan Hall brings to the table here, and he goes on to win a very ugly decision victory. But I just can't put enough confidence in this fight to bet on either side, even with Derek Minner as a plus 170 dog. That gas tank is a little bit too much of an issue for me. If anything, I might take a flyer on Ryan Hall round 3 at plus 1,000. But again, very shaky to trust either guy in the spot. I'm going to be going with Derek Minner by decision, but I would heed most people to just stay away from this fight, watch this car crash or this slow car crash, however it ends up playing out, and just bet on one of the other 14 fights that we have on the slate. Skip this one. I promise you guys, you'll thank me for it later. But I'm going to go Derek Minner by decision. Alex Perez versus Matt Schnell. We got minus 320 on Alex Perez and plus 260 return on Matt Schnell. Now, some people might be low on Alex Perez because of his last performance where he just put himself into a guillotine and got submitted by Davison Figueiredo. However, at minus 320, seems to be a decent amount of people backing him as well. And I do think that he is a trustworthy spot here against the guy in Matt Schnell. So Alex Perez, in my opinion, he has solid fight IQ, right? Like, he knew his best way to win the fight against Figueiredo was to take that fight to the ground, and he wasted no time doing so, getting the fight to the ground or attempting to, but he did fall victim to that guillotine choke of Davison Figueiredo. A lot of people might look at that and be like, come on, dog, how could you get yourself submitted in such a big spot by such a rookie type of mistake? However, again, in my opinion, it was a good idea for him to take the fight to the ground because he probably would have got lit up on the feet. In the Jussier Formiga fight, high-level BJJ black belt Jussier Formiga, Alex Perez decided to go out there and just calf kick him to death, eventually getting that finish at the ending of that first round. So good fight IQ from him there. Then in past fights where we've seen him have the grappling advantage over his opponents with not much to worry about in regards to the jiu-jitsu coming back his way, he takes these guys to the ground, grinds them out, finds a finish from on top, or grinds them to a decision victory. I'm expecting that Alex Perez this weekend against Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell is a solid striker. I think he's the better technical boxer out of both of the guys, but his takedown defense leaves a little bit to be desired. And although he is active off of his back at times, I do think that Perez will have tremendous success in terms of controlling him and getting some dominant positions of his own from on top, and possibly even finding a finish as well, whether it's ground and pound or a submission himself. I lean Perez. I think he is parlayable in this spot. I think he redeems himself pretty emphatically here. And, whether you want to take the under or even take Perez by inside the distance, I think both are good bets here because I think that we'll see Perez have tremendous success. Again, dragging this fight to the ground. I like his takedowns. His entries are great. Matt Schnell, again, good striker, but I think he's not going to be able to really let that go, especially with the takedown attempts that are going to be coming his way. And that's where I think we'll see Perez have his success and his ability to get his hand raised here. So I like Perez. I think he bounces back. I like him inside the distance as well, but I wouldn't mind just parlaying him at around minus 300, as I do think he is a safe enough spot this weekend. So I'm going to go Perez. Let's go second round TKO via ground and pound. Miranda Maverick versus Aaron Blanchfield. We got minus 130 on Miranda Maverick and plus 110 on Aaron Blanchfield. Now, Blanchfield is coming off a successful UFC debut over Sarah Alpar, where she was able to control her over 15 minutes and was near a finish at the end of that fight, as she was really letting go with her ground and pound. Now, normally earlier in her career, she was seen as a grappler. She takes the fight to the ground and really implements her jiu-jitsu very effectively. the only fight that she has lost was obviously to Tracy Cortez, and that was a very close fight as well. But we are seeing improvements in her striking game. And I feel like you can say the opposite here for Miranda Maverick as well, who's had a very solid striking game and developing a ground game as well. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. I'm a little bummed that both these girls are getting matched up with each other, similar to how Miranda Maverick was matched up with Macy Barber last time around. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if either of these women end up facing each other. I'm talking about Barber, Blanchfield, and Maverick. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a rematch with either three of these women here. I'm liking the progression that we're seeing from the Blanchfield side in terms of her output, her confidence in her striking, and her ability to blend her striking with the grappling and landing takedowns on the back end of combinations, really catching her opponents off guard. Miranda Maverick does a very good job of that too, but it feels like she could be controlled here on the ground by Blanchfield if Blanchfield is successful with getting this fight there. We obviously saw Jillian Robertson have some success with that, and Robertson might be a better BJJ player than Erin Blanchfield, but I think that Blanchfield will show solid top pressure here to be able to maintain that top control and possibly grind out Maverick in the spot. I could see it going both ways though. I can see Maverick implement a similar situation and or a similar style and have success. However, I'm actually going to lean with the Erin Blanchfield side here at slight underdog odds. I think she's more active on the feet, and I do think that will cause Miranda some problems, especially when she seems to be a little bit more selective with her own striking offense. And then again, once we get Miranda Maverick striking, I wouldn't be surprised to see Erin Blanchfield look to take the fight to the ground and then really, just capitalize on those opportunities. This is a close fight, but I have to lean with Erin Blanchfield here, as I do think that as an overall package, she has a little bit more to bring to the table, and I think that could absolutely lead her to a victory this weekend. Obviously, Miranda Maverick, very tough fight. Well, not tough. She won that fight against Macy Barber last time around. Unfortunately, the judges saw it the other way, and we saw Macy Barber get her hand raised. That's one of those few fights where you guys, if you go to MMA decisions and you see the scorecards on that fight, you're just like, what are these guys thinking? Every media member scored that fight for Miranda Maverick. And I'm not sure what the judges were seeing in that fight. I had Maverick rounds 1 and 2. Is what it is. Judges saw it the other way. But in regards to this fight, it could still end up playing close, which is why I have my concerns about backing Blanchfield here. But, if you are putting a gun to my head, I have a decent amount of confidence that she should be able to blend her game together much better than what we're going to be seeing from Maverick. And I do think we see Blanchfield getting her hand raised in this fight. I'm going Blanchfield via decision. I'm excited for this one just to see how it plays out, but I am on the Blanchfield side. More than likely a no bet because of how close I expect it to be, but I'm going to go Blanchfield via decision as my official prediction. Andre Munhoz versus Eric Anders. We got -145 on the Brazilian and +125 on Eric Anders, who's now going to be competing from Fight Ready, I believe now for the third camp. The first two obviously being for the Darren Stewart fights. We obviously know how the first one went. The second one, he was able to control that fight for about 8 minutes, really controlling Darren Stewart up against the cage, landing a couple takedowns, but for the most part, really roughing him up with control time. And, they pretty much got booed out of the octagon concerning how low volume and not entertaining that fight being. A lot of people were very disappointed with it, but Eric Anders did show some good resolve in terms of not letting that get to him and really just sticking with the game plan and trying to get the W that night, and that's exactly what he did. Now, he has a little bit tougher of a test ahead of him in Andre Munhoz, who's going to be looking to ground this fight and really use his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu against the bruiser, if that's what you want to call Eric Anders. However, I do believe that Eric Anders will be able to effectively stop takedowns in this fight and keep this fight in the striking range where he should have a bit of an advantage. Andre Munhoz has been known to start to slow down in fights, even when he's able to get that top control against his opponents. Sometimes he goes a little bit too hard for submission over position and ends up losing the position, allowing his opponent to get on top, and then they're able to kind of just do their damage and do their work from on top. However, I'd be surprised if Eric Anders allows this fight to actually get into that the jiu-jitsu realm, as I do believe he does a good enough job in terms of getting back to his feet and giving his opponent some issues, and that's exactly what I'm expecting this weekend when he goes up against Andre Munhoz. So I like Anders here. I don't think even with moving over there to fight ready that he's going to put himself in championship contention or anything like that. But I think it should be enough for him to solidify him as a very solid gatekeeper to keep out the guys that don't deserve a shot in the top 10 to top 5 range. So I'm going to go with Eric Anders, and I'm going to take him to win this fight via decision. Next up, we got a middleweight scrap between Bruno Silva, who's coming in at minus 350, and the Beverly Hills Ninja coming in at plus 270. And all I can say about this fight is violence. I'm expecting violence from the jump in this fight with the explosive nature of Jordan Wright. He's very fast as well and hits with a lot of power. And then obviously Bruno Silva on the other end, who has a ton of power himself and a ton of knockouts to boot. I'm expecting this fight to be crazy from the jump. I mean, there might be a minute or two of kind of feeling each other out, but once these guys feel a little bit more comfortable in there, I'm truly expecting them to go out there and throw some bombs in this fight. The under 1.5 is actually sitting at minus 155, and I don't think that's a bad spot here, considering that I think both guys have finishing capabilities, although I believe it's going to be Bruno Silva who ends up getting his hand raised in this spot. The fight doesn't go to decision, minus 445. You can parlay that shit. I'd be surprised if that misses here. The fight doesn't start round 3 at minus 180. I think is a very good spot as well, because if this doesn't finish in the first, I think most definitely it should be able to finish in the second here, considering the way that both of these guys fight. I think if there's anybody that's going to try to implement a grapple-heavy game plan, it's probably the Jordan Wright side of things, as he does have some sneaky takedowns and decent top control if he needs it. However, I think that Bruno Silva will be able to stop some of those takedowns and get this fight back to the feet, and then try to knock out Jordan Wright doing so as well. So very much looking forward to seeing how this fight goes down. But one thing I feel like we can almost guarantee is the fact that this fight will not see the judges' scorecards, and that's exactly where my money's going to be parlaying that fight doesn't go to decision. But in terms of an actual pick, I'm going to be going with the Bruno Silva side of things here. I do think he's a little bit more technical on the feet, and he should be able to be ready for whatever Jordan Wright's throwing at him, and then he should be able to counter effectively and find that knockout blow. So I'm going to be going with Bruno Silva. I'll take him to win this fight via first round KO. Augusto Sakai versus Tai Tuivasa. We got a pick'em fight here, as both guys are coming in around that minus 110 range. Now, I'm not big on Tai Tuivasa myself. I really think that at times he is KO or bust. He does have a couple decision victories under his belt, but technically speaking, I just don't think he's the greatest fighter. Augusto Sakai, in my opinion, is the better technical fighter, pretty much in all facets of MMA here. However, considering this fight is happening at heavyweight, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a knockout transpire from either side here. However, I think for this fight to be fully in Sakai's favor, he needs to be as sharp as possible. In and out movement, land a couple of takedowns if possible, but really try to stay safe from that big power that's going to be coming from the Tuivasa side. Tuivasa, again, he throws heavy shots. Sometimes he throws some leg kicks as well, which is pretty gnarly as well, considering the power and strength he's able to generate from his kicks. But I do think that it's something that Sakai will be well prepared for. Sakai is the side here. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to talk about complete skill, Sakai is the side. But again, at heavyweight, the margin for error is so small that if Tuivasa finds that perfect shot, he should be able to put Sakai's lights out. I know Sakai has been taken out in both of his last fights. The Overeem fight, I can attribute that more to gassing in a 5-round fight. And then obviously in the last fight against Jairzinho Rozenstruik was doing decent work until he got caught by that big power of Jairzinho Rozenstruik. If you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know that I have like this heavyweight ranking gauntlet in terms of knockout power, and I put Jairzinho Rozenstruik roughly around the 3rd spot, right? You got Walt Harris, you got Jairzinho Rozenstruik, you got Derek Lewis, then you got Francis Ngannou. I feel as though Tuivasa is a little bit lower on that list, and I think that it's something that Sakai should be able to overcome here. Again, he has decent enough footwork to be able to stay out of big trouble against a guy like Tuivasa, who's a little bit slower and plods a little bit more. But I think if Sakai wants to play as safe as possible, let's try to drag this fight to the ground. You know what I mean? I know it's not something that he looks to do often, but considering his recent run, I think it would be smart for him to do so. Regardless, even if this fight does stay on the feet and we don't see a knockout transpire, I gotta believe that it's going to be Sakai coming away with his hand raised, as I do think he has the better output of the two, and then obviously the movement and ability to nullify the amount of damage coming at him should be enough for him to get the judges nod here. So a couple of ways you could play this fight, in my opinion. Take the Sakai side. That's kind of where my money line perspective is. But the fight goes to decision, and the overs, I think, isn't a bad spot here. Everybody always thinks heavyweights unders, violence, but I feel like the way that these guys match up, similar to how how Sakai lined up against Blagoy Ivanov and a couple other fighters, I see this fight going the full 15 minutes. So I'm going to go Augusto Sakai, and I'm going to take him to win this fight via decision. Dominic Cruz versus Pedro Munhoz. We got -120 on the Brazilian and +100 on the Dominator, Dominic Cruz. I'm looking forward to this fight a lot, as I believe that there's polarizing opinions on both sides. I saw somebody tweet earlier today saying that they've been seeing from many different analysts that this is a tailor-made fight for both guys, right? Some people are saying this is a tailor-made fight for Pedro, considering that he should be able to effectively land leg kicks here and slow down Dominic Cruz. And then I'm seeing people on the other side with Dominic Cruz saying that, he should be able to evade those leg kicks and dance circles around Pedro Munhoz here and should be able to get his game going, whether it's takedowns or striking based. And I'm on the latter side here. As soon as this matchup was announced, I felt pretty convicted about Dominic Cruz. And then given the shaky run that I've been on as of late and some of the confidence that I'm seeing from guys that I really respect in the space, it did kind of teeter me off of going really hard on Dominic Cruz in the spot. However, taking him to win this fight by decision around +185, +200 is a much better spot than taking him straight up in this fight, because we've seen Pedro Munhoz take a hellacious beating in the past, and the guy continues to chug forward. If Dominic Cruz is able to be the one to put Pedro Munhoz away, that would really put a bow on 2021, which has given us some very weird outcomes and some weird results. So it would absolutely be a 2021 type of thing if Cruz goes out there and knocks out or even submits Pedro Munhoz in this spot. However, I think the fight goes to decision is a decent enough spot here. The overs as well is a decent spot, but I truly believe that Dominic Cruz is the side in this fight. I did talk to some people and they believe that the success that Cejudo was able to have against Dominic Cruz in terms of implementing leg kicks was a lot more than just throwing leg kicks out there. And, they set it up properly. They kind of just knew certain things that Dominic Cruz would do and would fully commit to leg kicks, knowing the leg would be there. Casey Kenny landed the same amount of leg kicks that Henry Cejudo did, but it didn't nearly have the same amount of effect or damage that Cejudo was able to produce. Now, Pedro Munhoz is obviously known for his leg kicking game, and he should be able to affect Dominic Cruz here, but I'm wondering if he'll be able to set up those traps that he needs to effectively land leg kicks that are going to cause the judges to actually see the fight more so in his favor. I feel as though Dominic Cruz, with the mix of takedowns or even feinting takedowns and then his volume, should be enough to actually kind of decision his way to a classic Dominic Cruz fight. He only has 3 losses on his record, and people are just ready to kind of throw him to the side. But I really think that he's one of the better fighters that are out there. Yeah, I'm a big Dominic Cruz fan in this spot. Only losing to prime Cody Garbrandt, Uriah Faber, obviously way back in the day, and then obviously Henry Cejudo, who's been on his own wrecking train. I feel as though Cruz should be able to come back here at I believe he's 34, 35 years old. I think he still has enough left in the tank to go out there and beat a guy like Pedro Munhoz. Also, Dominic Cruz kind of strikes me as the guy that knows, when he knows it's his time, he's probably going to hang it up because he doesn't want to further diminish or tarnish his legacy. And I feel like this is one of those fights where he felt if he truly didn't feel like he could win or have a good enough game plan to win, he either, one, wouldn't have accepted the fight, or two, he probably just would have hung it up. So I like Dominic Cruz in this spot, at even money or even at +100 now, I think is a decent spot. However, just throw the money line out the window. If you can bet him by decision, bet him by decision. Even the Pedro Munhoz side, I see an argument for betting him by decision as well, but he does have that fight-ending power at times if he's able to connect perfectly on his opponents. And again, if he's able to effectively establish those leg kicks, it could cause a short night for Dominic Cruz as well. But I'm going to be on the Cruz side. I'm hoping for a classic Cruz performance here, and I think that +180, +200 on his decision line is a great bet in this spot. So I'm going Dominic Cruz, and I'm going to take them to win this fight via decision. Josh Emmett versus Dan Ige. We got -165 on the Josh Emmett side of things and +145 the return on Dan Ige. Now, I'm very excited for this fight because this is obviously the return of Josh Emmett, who hasn't seen action since June of last year when he had that fight of the night performance against Shane Burgos, and that was a great fight where both guys were having tremendous success, but obviously Josh Emmett just landing the heavier strikes throughout that fight and then obviously getting the W the way that he did. Here against against Dan Ige, he's going up against a very tough guy in Dan Ige who's tough to put away. We've seen him go 25 minutes with Calvin Kattar, taking a bit of a beating. We saw him go 25 minutes with Korean Zombie, taking a beating. But when he is on, he's able to really establish his striking and his power and get his opponents to really respect what's coming his way. And that's normally how he has success. However, I say this with the utmost respect because I really respect Dan Ige, but I feel as though he's a bit of an overachiever. Winning fights he probably shouldn't have won, but when he does get into that prime spot, he ends up falling short, and I'm expecting this to be another prime spot where he ends up falling short. Sure, the year and a half layoff, or close to a year and a half layoff now for Josh Emmett is a little bit of a concern, but he strikes me as a guy that will be able to go out there and still implement his game plan without question. Add in the fact that he, just recently the news dropped about his very rough 2020 where he lost his older brother, as well as I believe his grandfather. One of his grandparents passed away, and it was just very tough on him. You could see even in the interview that it really impacted him, and I feel as though he's one of those guys that takes that and puts it into positive reinforcement in terms of motivating him to go out there and fight in their honor and fight as best as he can. And I'm expecting that this weekend here against Dan Ige. I think Ige will struggle with the power shots that's going to be coming his way. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Josh Emmett, mixing a couple takedowns either, as I feel like if he can keep Dan Ige on his toes with feinting takedowns and then throwing some big shots, or even actually completing takedowns, even if it's not with the intention in terms of controlling Dan Ige on the ground, I feel it's just good enough to keep Dan Ige thinking, and then from there, I think it's just going to keep him confused and then just kind of reacting to shots rather than getting his own game going. So I do like Josh Emmett in this spot. I know a lot of people are super confident in him. It was interesting to see the line go from about minus 230 down to minus 160 for Josh Emmett, but I think this is a more appropriate line for Josh Emmett, and I do think it's going to be a good enough spot for him to go out there and get a dub. So I'm going with Josh Emmett. Should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. I honestly think if there is a finish, it probably comes from the Dan Ige side, as we've seen Josh Emmett get starched in the past. However, that was against very tough and a hard-hitting Jeremy Stephens as well. But I do think that Josh Emmett will be able to put some damage on Ige here and then win this fight via decision. Kicking off the main card here, we have the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley, going up against Holly and Paiva. In terms of odds, as you expected, minus 320 for Sean O'Malley and plus 250 the return on Holly and Paiva. Now, Paiva is coming off an upset of his own where he was able to defeat Kyler Phillips in his last fight, albeit, a lot of people scored that fight a draw, considering Kyler Phillips had him on skates and was close to finishing him in that first round, scoring that at 10-8. However, Paiva was able to rally back in the second and third rounds and take home a decision victory and showed off his attrition and ability to take some damage. However, given the amount of damage that he took in that fight and how cleanly Kyler Phillips was able to land those shots and drop him, I feel like this is a great matchup for Sean O'Malley to go out there and give another classic Sean O'Malley type highlight knockout. Now, I know Holly and Paiva is very difficult to put away, but I don't think he's fought somebody to the level of Sean O'Malley in terms of being able to set up knockout blows on the feet and being able to deliver on it. And that's exactly what I'm thinking we're going to see here. Now, some people might step back a little bit in terms of O'Malley's knockout power, since he was not able to put away a guy like Chris Moutinho. But man, Moutinho seemed like he was made out of steel that night, taking every single shot and continue to move forward. However, there were instances where you probably could have stopped that fight earlier too, but is what it is. Chris Moutinho kind of goes out on his shield late in this fight, seconds away from going to a decision. But Sean O'Malley, I do think will have just as much, if not more, success here against Holly and Paiva. Now, Paiva, for a long time, I've been saying is a guy that I believe is a dark horse in the flyweight division. However, his body could not make flyweight any longer, and it seems like he's made his move up to 135 pounds, where he probably will have more success. Unfortunately, stylistically speaking, horrible fight for him. Okay, I'm not going to say horrible, because if he is able to drag this fight to the ground and kind of control O'Malley there, he can find tremendous success himself. I just don't believe that his stand-up or his striking defense is good enough to deal with the power over O'Malley, and anytime that he tries to close a distance, I think O'Malley will counter effectively and kind of scare off that takedown or shuck off that takedown just off of power alone. But I got to say, I would be shitting my pants a little bit if Raulian Paiva goes out there and lands takedowns at will in this first round, because that minus 290 on O'Malley is not going to look good at all. Or I should say minus 320 on O'Malley will not look good. The way I take this fight, O'Malley by KO, under 2.5, which I think is around minus 120, minus 130. I think those are the spots to go to in this fight, because paying that minus 290 on O'Malley, you could justify it. I don't know. It is a tough fight, because I do think that Paiva is one of the tougher tests that we've seen O'Malley go up against. You know what I mean? Over the last couple of opponents, maybe you can make an argument for Chito Vera, who obviously got his hand raised that night with an asterisk beside it. But yeah, the Paiva is a tough out, but I think he will eventually succumb to that knockout power of Sean O'Malley. I'm going O'Malley. I'm taking him to win this fight by decision. I'm going to lay off of parlaying him too heavily here, but I do think he is a side, and I do think he gets a knockout. So official prediction is going to be Sean O'Malley by first round knockout. Kai Kara-France welcomes Cody Garbrandt to the flyweight division, and we got minus 140 now on Cody Garbrandt and plus 120 the return on Kai Kara-France. Now, the main thing a lot of people are going to be looking at here, well, two main things here. The weigh-in for Cody Garbrandt, how he looks at 125 pounds. We saw him at Media Day and saying, flyweight fight week hits different, and it's obvious whenever a fighter is making that cut down for the first time to a new weight class. We obviously saw it with Jose Aldo. Aldo was able to master it, and now, he's really having success making that run at bantamweight, and Cody Garbrandt is hoping to replicate that kind of success by going down to 125 pounds, where, a title shot seems a little bit more open than it does at 135 pounds. Especially not to mention, he did lose that fight to Rob Font back in May, which obviously put him down the ladder a little bit. But a win over Kai Kara-France here could give him an immediate title shot, given his name value and the fact that he was already scheduled to fight Deiveson Figueiredo when Figueiredo was the champ I think it was last year or maybe the year before that, but he's already been in the conversation for flyweight title talks, and he's never even fought at flyweight, which is hilarious to me. However, I think that this is a great stylistic matchup for him if his durability can hold up. He is the much better fighter by a mile against Kai Kara-France. Kai has really made his name off of being a heavy puncher, knockout puncher, the ability to land big shots and hurt his opponents and kind of, either get the knockdown, get the win by knockout, or even just winning a round by knocking down his opponents. Otherwise, there's not much else to his game. You know what I mean? I think that Garbrandt is the much better fighter, much better technical striker, and I think he should be able to effectively counter Kai Kara-France anytime he tries to blitz forward and get his own striking going. For me, it's deciding whether I take the minus 140 plunge here on Cody Garbrandt, who I know is the much better fighter, knowing that there is a possibility that he gets knocked out in this fight. And if we really nitpick, there are some fights where we can be like, is Cody really chinny, right? Like he survived against a couple other big punchers in the past. Obviously, he got knocked out by TJ Dillashaw. He got knocked out by Pedro Munhoz, where he, really just threw his game plan out the window and went out there and went strike for strike against a heavy hitter in Pedro Munhoz and ended up coming out on the losing end. I'd be surprised if he goats himself into another firefight here against Kai Kara-France. He must have learned from his mistakes. But that's kind of my concern. I think for Garbrandt to win this fight, he's more than likely going to win it by decision, right? He needs to stay disciplined, get in and out with his strikes, kind of replicate that Dominic Cruz performance that he had a couple years ago, which really burst him onto the scene, right? He went into that fight as a pretty massive underdog, or not a massive underdog, but a decent underdog, because people didn't expect him to deal with that footwork of Dominic Cruz effectively, but he did. And, he hit him way more than any fighter was able to hit Dominic Cruz at that point in time. And I think that, again, this is an easy fight for Garbrandt if his chin is able to take some shots that are inevitably going to land here from Kai Kara-France. So I do like Garbrandt a decent bit here. Him by decision at plus 360, I think, is a decent spot as well. Again, if you do think he gets the knockout over Kai Kara-France, that's a different discussion. Personally, I don't think he will. He does have the power in doing so, but I don't think it will bode him well in terms of overcommitting or really putting too much power on his shots. I think light, footwork and output is his key to victory in this fight against Kai Kara-France. So I'm going to go with Garbrandt, but for me, I believe I'm just going to take a sit back and watch approach here and see how it works out for Garbrandt at 125 pounds. 1, with the weight cut, 2, how he looks inside the cage, and 3, obviously, if he's able to take a shot down there. But if he does, then I will more than likely look to bet him in the future against favorable opponents as well. So I'm going Cody Garbrandt, and I'm going to take him to win this fight via decision. Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Jeff Neal. We got -130 on Ponzinibbio, and we got +110, on Jeff Neal, who's trying to get back from a 2-fight losing streak now. And obviously, we know about his DWI that he got on Thanksgiving, but I'm not going to put too much emphasis on that. I don't think it will have too much of a bearing on how this fight's truly going to go. Now, this is a striker's delight, right? We got 2 guys that like to go out there and like to bang. I'd say Jeff Neal a little bit more technically than Ponzinibbio, who kind of likes to be aggressive, throw some wide shots, and really just try to break his opponent with aggressiveness and pressure. And at times we've seen, Jeff Neal not respond well to pressure, most notably that Neal Magny fight. However, I think you guys are doing a massive disservice to Jeff Neal, comparing the fact that Neal Magny was able to break Jeff Neal with pressure compared to what Santiago is going to be doing with his pressure on Jeff Neal here. Magny is just a weird opponent, right? Like sometimes he just completely gets decimated in the grappling like he did against Chiesa, and then sometimes he goes out there and stifles the plans of a guy like Jeff Neal and really just works him from the outside. That's not how Ponzinibbio pressures, right? Magny is just, I'm going to keep throwing shots out there. I'm going to keep throwing shots no matter where from, and I'm just going to stay on the outside, whereas Ponzinibbio moves forward, crashes forward, and throws his big hooks and bombs and tries to land effective strikes on his opponent, whereas I feel that kind of plays into the game plan of Jeff Neal, right? I feel like Jeff Neal can counter effectively in this spot. He has a quick straight down the middle that I feel like we'll be able to catch Santiago a couple times. Ponz does have a little bit of a striking defense issue, especially when he's dealing with an effective counter striker, and I think that we're going to see that here against Jeff Neal. I'm seeing money come in on Ponzinibbio, and I'm seeing a lot of guys that I trust and respect their opinions, and they're pretty decent on Santiago Ponzinibbio on this spot. But I feel like that this is a bounce back spot for Jeff. We got to give him some slack in terms of the Neal Magny fight. Again, very weird stylistic matchup. And even the fight before that against Wonderboy Thompson, another spot stylistically very different and difficult for a lot of fighters to deal with. And that's exactly what I think happened to Jeff that night. However, now he has a striker that's going to try to fight the fire with him and try to actually, just straight up try to box him and straight up try to strike with him, compared to playing on the outside and being a little bit more deceptive with their movements. Ponzinibbio is not going to be deceptive at all. He's going to throw some leg kicks. He's going to try to just stay in your face. But I think that's not going to be a good thing to do, especially with a guy as technical and proficient as Jeff Neal. I think that we see Jeff Neal go back to form here, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a knockout blow either, as I do think that it is a viable option here, considering how lackadaisical at times Ponzinibbio can be with the striking defense. So there's 2 ways I'm looking to approach this fight. You can either bet Neal straight at +210, +110, which I think is a decent enough spot. But even a sneaky spot on him by decision at +525, I don't think is a bad spot, as I do think that he could land the more effective strikes here. And Pons, he's shown decent durability, obviously, outside of that Li Jingliang fight. And I do think he'll be able to take some of the shots here from Neal. But I do think that they will be impactful enough that the judges will side with the Neal side, even though Neal might be on the back foot for a decent majority of this fight. But again, the ace in the hole is the knockout, right? Neal has that speed, Neal has that counter ability, and I feel like he could either find a head kick or even just a straight down the middle that could put Ponzinibbio on his butt, and for Neal to get his hand raised this weekend. So I'm going Jeff Neal. Again, a couple contrarian picks compared to what I've been seeing out there recently, but I feel decent about it here in Jeff Neal, especially at these underdog odds. So I'm going to go Jeff Neal. Again, tough between decision and KO. In my best bets and props article, I put more confidence on the decision spot. But the more that I'm thinking about it now, I feel like Jeff Neal will be able to find that perfect counter shot to put Santiago down here. So I'm going to go Jeff Neal, and I'll take him to win this fight by second round KO. Time for the co-main event. We have the women's bantamweight strap on the line here with Amanda, the Lioness, Nunes going up against Juliana Pena. And obviously, heavy chalk odds here on Nunes coming in at -900. The flip side, we got Juliana Pena coming in at +600. Plain and simple, does Pena win this fight? Probably not. So then it comes down to, how does Nunes win this fight, and at what point does she win this fight, right? Because the total is set at 1.5, and the over 1.5 is sitting around -120, -140, depending on which bookie that you're looking at. And if anything, that's the one that I lean the most, because I feel like Juliana Pena is going to be going out there and trying to implement a grapple-heavy game plan that could potentially halt the plans of Nunes getting her out of there early. I feel like the clinch positions and the grappling, it won't be like super close, but it will be enough for us to stall the time here and possibly go over that 7.5 minute mark. There has been some heat been thrown during the press conferences, and both these women kind of just trading barbs with each other. So maybe that kind of fuels Nunes to go and try to get Pena out of there sooner. But if it doesn't pan out, then I think that this fight will probably go over 1.5. Nunes, over her last run, she hasn't really fought too many grapple-heavy fighters. Sarah McMahon is one that obviously comes to mind. Kat Zingano, who obviously got that victory over her. But nobody's really been able to effectively grapple her here, and that's what Pena is looking to do. But I don't think she'll be able to do it successfully. Maybe she might have some early success, but outside of that, I just don't see it being sustained. Especially, we've been seeing, Juliana Pena trying to do it to Jermaine Durandamy, and she almost got choked out. Well, she almost got choked out by a Von Flue, and then she obviously got choked out by that guillotine as well, where she was just too desperate for a takedown there, and then ultimately put herself out. Nunes should win this fight. I'd rather take Nunes inside the distance and parlay that with something rather than take her straight up. Obviously, -900 doesn't really do much for your parlays. But Nunes KO -140, I think that's going to be your path to victory here. I do think that she gets Juliana Pena out there. I feel like I should be more confident in it, but I feel as though anytime I try to choose a method of victory here for Nunes, she always goes out there and wins by the opposite way. I believe I took her inside the distance against Spencer, goes the distance. I believe I took her inside the distance against Jermaine Durandamy, that goes the distance. I did take her inside the distance and by submission against Megan Anderson, as I feel like that was the easiest call of all time. But I think that Pena might be able to take a little bit of that early damage and be able to see the 7.5 minute mark of this fight. Again, no super confidence here, but if you guys are forcing me to make a bet here at decent enough odds, I would rather take the over than anything, but I'm staying away from this fight in general. I might have Nunes inside the distance, tied to a couple parlays, but outside of that, I have no interest. Let's see Linus just go out there and do what she does, and maybe we can get more favorable matchups in a future, more favorable odds in a future matchup than anything. I'm going Nunes by, let's say, 3rd round TKO, but let's just watch the Linus Stewart thing. I don't think we need to have money tied to this fight. I'm going Nunes, 3rd round KO. Time for the main event. We got the lightweight strap on the line here between Charles Oliveira, looking to defend his title for the first time, up against Dustin Poirier. And I can't wait for this fight, as it should be a barn burner from the jump. Right off the jump, I'm going to say violence, right? Charles Oliveira fights more often than not. Don't see the judges' scorecards. I think in his entire UFC career, which has spanned 29 fights, if I'm not mistaken, he's only seen the judges' scorecards 3 times. And now you're putting him into 25-minute fights. I'd be surprised if it's the scorecards again. Either he goes out there and kills, or he goes out there on his shield. And I think he has a perfect dance partner here in Dustin Poirier to be able to complete that fight. Doesn't go to decision spot here. Very tough and volatile fight to break down, right? We know Charles Oliveira is making strides in his striking improvement and his ability to aggressively implement that striking by staying in his opponent's face, ripping elbows, straight shots down the middle, knees, all that stuff. The guy's getting more confident as his career continues to go on, and it's a beautiful thing seeing it improve throughout his UFC run, and then obviously seeing him capture that UFC gold back in May. Dustin Poirier, on the hand, a great overall mixed martial artist, great boxer as well. I think he's going to be the slightly better boxer in this fight, but the aggressiveness of Oliveira could absolutely throw the technical abilities of both guys out the window in this fight. Charles, I believe if he wants to be successful, he should look for the takedowns here and try to get the fight to the ground. But I don't think it's, it's 100% that if he doesn't get the fight to the ground that he loses. I think that he should be able to find that success no matter where this fight is. But Dustin Poirier is a very tough out. I believe this fight is very volatile, man. Like anything can happen in this fight, especially with the newfound confidence that Charles has been able to accrue during this, I believe, 8 or 9 fight winning streak that he's currently on. Poirier is a very tough out though, and he won't go down without a fight. Personally, I'm staying away from the money line sides here, as I feel like either guy has a very good shot of winning this fight. If you want to talk about odds, maybe Oliveira is the value side here, as I do believe it's almost a 50-50 fight. However, I'm just going to take the fight doesn't go to decision. I know it's chalk, but there are a couple other fight doesn't go to decision spots that I spoke about previously that are more than ripe for you to go out there and actually parlay and put together. So I do like, I am going to lean with the Poirier side. I do think he'll stay sound enough defensively speaking, and then eventually break Charles Oliveira with his striking technique, and maybe even ground and pound Charles, right? He could drop him eventually and then maybe get some big shots off from on top. But if he knows what's best, anytime Charles Oliveira's back hits the ground and he's not knocked out, let him back to his feet and pour it on again, once again, from the striking side of things. Fun fight. Pick the violence. Don't get burned by picking a money line here. If this fight goes the distance, I don't know what I'll do. You know what I mean? Obviously, a lot of people are going to point to the Santos and Walker fight from a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago now, saying if that fight goes to a decision, any fight can go to a decision. But I'll throw this out there. Those guys were light heavyweights, right? The longer a fight goes, the less power, less energy they're able to kind of muster up for a knockout blow, whereas these guys at the lighter weight classes have their ability to finish fights late, something that Dustin Poirier has done on numerous occasions as well. So, yeah, I like the fight doesn't go to decision. I like the fight doesn't start round 5. Fight doesn't start round 4. I'm expecting a Dustin Poirier finish. Let's call it second round, TKO, and the Diamond Dustin Poirier. However, the fan in me wants to see Charles Oliveira go out there and continue this ridiculous run, because I've been following him since the jump, and to see the progress and the strides that he's made in his overall MMA game is a thing of beauty to watch. And again, he's never in a boring fight either, right? That Tony Ferguson fight was a weird one, being able to control Ferguson the way that he did. But if he can effectively do that here against Poirier as well, I'd be surprised. I'd really be surprised. But yeah, I'm going to be going with the Poirier side of things here. I think he weathers that early storm and then eventually gets Charles Oliveira out of there. I'm going to go Dustin Poirier and round 2 TKO. And that's a wrap on the breakdowns. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you guys haven't already, please make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe. And if you guys want to show your boy a little extra love, $5 a month on the Patreon. Link is in the description below. You get all access to early breakdowns, best bets and props article where I go through the entire card and give you guys my best bet and best prop for it, as well as a little tidbit in regards to the live betting mindset that you should have going into every single fight. A great Discord community where we just don't talk MMA. We talk a bunch of other shit as well, including betting other sports. And then obviously a bunch of other great stuff. Prize picks tips all get posted over there as well. So shout out to anybody that runs the prize picks tips. And I think I will more than likely in the new year be adding some DFS content in there, because that's definitely a side of the industry I need to get into a little bit more. So a ton to love on the Patreon. It's only $5 a month. Does not break the bank at all. Make sure you guys check it out. That's the best way to support your boy. And then obviously, if you guys have been watching the YouTube videos of the last 2 weeks, you guys see that I've been adding that Coolbet sponsored logo on the video. They've been a huge supporter of your boy, and I truly appreciate them. Make sure you guys use promo code MMALOTN2, and they will match your initial deposit up to $200. Trust me, the main selling point of Coolbet, a lot of people like this aspect, is the fact that you can parlay props. You know, a lot of people like scratching that DJ itch by putting a couple props together and trying to get a massive payout. So make sure you guys check out Coolbet. Once again, coolbet.com. Use promo code MMALOTN2, and they'll match your initial deposit up to $200. All right, we got one event left on the calendar year next week, December 18th. Derek Lewis against Chris Daukaus. That is the last event of the year. I can't wait to break down that card for you guys, and I'm hoping to drop those breakdowns shortly on the Patreon, well in advance of me dropping it to the public as well. So check out the Patreon. All right, good luck on your bets this week, and I'll see you guys next week for Daukaus versus Lewis. Let's get this money, folks.